Just before we start, I just want to throw my support to the Landsberger family. I think sometimes things happen in our industry that's bigger than the game, and reading the story with my own family today, I felt like it was not something I should pass up the opportunity to send my support and love to his. I didn't know him personally particularly well, but to colleagues who worked with him, people he's done work within our industry, people he's supported in that time, but also obviously his family. I think he's well respected and an enormously important part of what we do as an organisation and as a full industry. I think it's important we support each other in these times, and just thought it'd be worth starting with that.
Sam, going into this weekend and up against the old coach in the final round of the season, there's a bit of symmetry there, I suppose. Do you read it? Do you buy into that at all, or it's just another game?
I mean, there's a lot of stories in sport, isn't there? I think even for Liam Shields, for him to play his final game for the two teams he played for, there's a bit of beauty to that. And the theatre of the game, there's stories that you guys will love writing about. And we love that. It'll bring a few extra fans to the game and eyes to the TV. But, I mean, for us, I've been saying it for feels like a long time now, but every week's a final, isn't it? So this is as good as an elimination final for the game we have. We don't want to put our season in anyone else's hands. So the final scoreboard will be the thing that matters for us. And we know that if we win, we'll play finals footy. So the incentive is there to have a good performance. The peripheral stuff, we'll leave it just there on the periphery.
Does it surprise you how quickly this has all turned around, Sam? Not only just 3 years, but from zip 5, 1-6?
I mean, I think we've been really clear with the strategic plan that we've had for quite a long period of time, trying to build a list, build a playing group, build a culture that would sustain us through successful times, and that would create a game style that would bring success for when our time for finals footy came. And so we've been building towards it. I think I've been quoted before saying there was no speed limit on how quickly that would be. The role of all of us as the support for the players is to put us in an environment where we can go as quickly as possible. Now we're getting close, but we're far from a finished product.
When you look at that crew against, I know the opposition on the weekend is later, they're 18, but the way you were able to just go whoosh throughout the gates and put the game straight away, was there much you could take from that you could implement against the better sides and go, well, that's the sort of thing we need to play going into September?
I mean, I think every game there's some learning. I think the standards that we hold ourselves to have continued to grow and improve. And I think you look at the very best sides and what they accept and what they don't. There's a big difference from that to sides who are building and growing and their players haven't played together as much. So I think we looked at the early part of last week and think a lot went right for us, obviously, particularly when we kicked some goals pretty quickly through the latter part of the first quarter. But then we looked at the second quarter, which we get outscored and we go away from it. And it's a great lesson for us that our best is pretty potent, kick 9 goals in a quarter, but we lose the next quarter by 2 goals. So our best is very good, but when we're not on and when we're not predictable enough and we're not putting enough pressure on the opposition, that we're going to fall down pretty quickly.
We have CJ and Jack Scrimshaw available this weekend?
No, CJ won't be. So he's sort of he can run sort of 75% and he can get, but as soon as he gets a little bit high, a little bit quicker than that. I mean, his 80% is sort of everyone else's 100. But having him not being able to quite feel good enough at that speed means that the risk is not worth taking for him. Scrim, we're not sure. Today we'll see how he goes. He's got, he obviously had to have a clean out, so he's got like a nasty cut, if you like. So he'll wear some bandaging. I think he might wear a glove for a part of the session and see how it feels functionally. If he functionally can use it, then he'll be available for selection.
Does it make it a bit harder to qualify to kick CJ? He's missed 3 games back end plus the week off.
I haven't thought about selection beyond this week, so we need to win this game, otherwise selection at that point won't matter. So good try.
Is he tracking about where you thought he was tracking, or is he not coming along as quickly as you hoped?
Oh, I mean, if I'm really honest about it, I thought at the start that we were being super conservative not playing him in the first game. So the first game that he missed, it was more of a discussion, hey, like, yeah, you're a bit tight of training. You could train, but it was a bit tight. And it was really a line ball call around whether he played or not, and we decided to go the ultra conservative option and say, look, I don't think it's worth it, because if you do hurt yourself, Obviously, the year's getting late. So we were very conservative, and then I suspected that by Monday he would have been fine, but he wasn't. So it ended up being a bit of a lucky call, or a good call on that first occasion, and now what we're hoping is that after this week he'll be available. Yeah, I mean, he's unavailable this week, and there's no guarantees after that. There's no surgical interventions needed, so he doesn't need anything except to feel good enough to play. So how long that takes is up to his body and his healing powers, and he'll be doing everything he can to make sure he's available as soon as possible. But it's a sore at the moment. It's just pain and soreness that's hurting him. He can actually move it okay, but it's just very, very tender and sore to the touch or any movement. So as soon as he gets that back, he'll be available.
Sam, a little bit broader one. What do you feel have been some of the critical decisions, moments, games in your time in charge that's got you to this point?
That's a tough one. This is a really boring answer, but I think consistency of decision making has been important. I think, big on strategy, so making sure strategically we were all heading, as a whole organisation, heading in the same direction. So whether that was the way the list was being built, whether that was the way we staffed the list, whether that was the way we developed the list, whether that was the way we picked the selection for each game. I think the consistency of all of those things going through the same filter. Every single decision has gone through the strategic, is this the right decision, not just for this weekend, but for our strategy. And so by being so consistent in everything building towards the same thing, I think that's what's led to the accelerated performance. I don't think it's we did this one thing and that was the key. It was more the consistency of decision making from everyone, and we've been really transparent. Even you guys know exactly what our strategy was. So because of its transparency and its ease of implementation, I think everyone from, whether that's board or administration or coaches or football department staff or players themselves, everyone understood what we were trying to achieve, and that makes the decision making easier. And I think those consistent decisions have given us success so far.
And a big part of that was embracing youth, stripping back a bit and embracing youth.
Yeah, well, I mean, we all looked at our list profile a couple of years ago and said, all right, this is not, need to get the right players in, probably need to hit the draft a little bit more, we need to invest key positions to key players for the future, and that was part of the strategy. And so part of it was, it's not just about getting games, it's getting games in positions that they're likely to play. So that's been one of the consistent decisions which has helped us.
Did you expect Calsher Dear to have this big an impact when you walked in November?
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not.
How have you done it?
I mentioned this week that I think when we assess players, you assess a key forward, and we'll all go to the draft combine and we'll look at speed, athletic profile, jump, but probably the thing that is very, very hard to measure and they can't capture at a combine is competitiveness, ability to learn and implement quickly, and coachability. I don't mean it from a coach necessarily, but from his teammates, where to go, all those things. I think his level of improvement has been so significant because of how raw he was. He was so open-minded to be willing to learn, and he tries hard, which sounds so basic, but he just tries really hard. Every time the ball hits the ground, he chases it. And that, there's a lot of highly talented younger players that don't have that naturally. So they have to work on it, and that takes time. And fortunately for him, he might not have the most beautiful kicking action, but he does naturally try to put pressure on. And that means at his worst games, he still performs a pretty good team role.
Carl Lehman, Sam, earlier in the season, we asked the question about him in terms of his role down back, and you're saying you're still trying to fine-tune it. Looking at his game on the weekend, what he's been able to add from that back half, how important is he for that run?
His second half of the season has been quite underrated, I think. I think within our four walls, we've been wrapped with Carl's influence. The thing about Carl is he's quite a deep thinker about the game. He has a great understanding. He'll come to me, not weekly, but probably monthly, with an idea about the way, something we could do and something we could implement, an idea that he has that might help us, and usually they're spot on. And so he's been really able to drive his own role. He knows what his strengths are, and he knows that what we're trying to do as a coaching group is get him to play in a way where we can maximise the things he can do. So how he runs, how he kicks the ball, how he communicates with his teammates, they're his three outstanding strengths. And whatever role we can give him to help him do those things consistently. But he's driven a lot of it himself, so I think glad someone finally asked me a question because he's been very, very good.
Would you like to see the All-Australian squad, the All-Australian team next week include 2 wingmen?
My preference with the All-Australian team is that it's played. They just pick the best players for the positions, not the midfield. You know.
So if there are 2 wingmen picked, should Massimo be picked?
I hope so. I mean, it would be a great story if he was. I'm sure you guys would love that. I would assume that Errol Goulden has one wing. And then if I had to guess, they'll put a midfielder out on the other wing, despite him probably never played on the wing for the majority of the season. But if they choose 2 genuine wingmen, then he certainly deserves to be in the conversation.
Sam, how critical guys like Jack Gunston, Luke Bruce, behind the scenes, James Sicily as captain? We talk about the youth, but how big have those guys been?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of what we've grown, how we've grown this season, and people talk about, how quickly it's come along and are you surprised? I think the thing that's changed the most is the players' ownership and buy-in for their own development and each other's. And so the standard that they hold each other to has just grown enormously. I think we saw Dylan Moore's interview after the Gold Coast game where he said it was about bringing your mouth guard to training and getting the players to drive their own standards. I think the coaches have had much less to do since then, and it's very much been player driven. And so when you get that, you're much more likely to improve. I think when it's your mate saying, hey, you can be better, it's very different to when your coach says it. And it's much more regular because they spend more time together. So I think that the coaching of our group, and it started from, Gunston and Bruce and Sicily and these guys and Dylan Moore, but it's also grown to now be across most of the team.
Was there a particular moment in that, when you talk about the growth there, was there a particular game, a particular moment where you noticed that shift, that it wasn't just a young team going out there going, hopefully that, but actually we're going right here with sheep station?
No, again, I look back across this season and there's so many key moments, but none of them stand out as in that was the moment that everything turned. I didn't have a moment like that. Maybe the players would say something different or some of the staff might say something different, but it's been a work in progress for a long period, and it's not even just this year. I think we made some steps last year, we made some steps the year before, and it's all been, gets to a tipping point when finally it all clicks for you, and it doesn't stay like that forever. I wish it did. But trying to stay in form, trying to keep momentum going, all those things are one of the great battles of sport, and that's why we love sport in itself, because there's such an unknown about it. And so as much as we're trying to keep momentum, we know that being too focused on the big picture can take away your focus from what's right in front of you. And we've seen so many, I don't know how everyone's tipping's going, but I tip it's probably not going particularly well because there are games every week that are surprises, and we need to make sure that we're so consistent and diligent in what's right in front of us. And we've been pretty good at that, and this week will be another challenge where we need to beat the team that's right in front of us, and that'll be North.